Story 1. Letting myself become overweight. I was never really taught proper nutrition, nor was it enforced as a child. Now I'm an adult with very low self-control when it comes to eating, and that lack of discipline spills over into other aspects of my life. It's a never-ending work in progress, but I'm taking things one day at a time and trying to continually reinforce good habits. Story 2. I regret not standing up for myself more often. Do you think people are more likely to succeed if they are assertive? Or is there something to be said for keeping quiet and staying out of conflict? Story 3. I was given a huge amount of money when my dad passed as soon as I turned 18, and it was gone in the blink of an eye. I will never stop feeling guilty for blowing the money that I could have bought a house with or invested. I will live with that guilt until the day I die. Story 4. Jumping into college right after high school, had no idea who I was or what I wanted to do. A lot of money wasted, drugs consumed, and destructive relationships later. I kind of know what I want and who I am, kind of. Story 5. Spending the night of Christmas Eve, 2001 at a friend's house. They ended up doing their family presents before bringing me home the next day, so I missed all of my family's Christmas morning. It was the last Christmas before one of my parents passed away. Story 6. Worrying too much about men in my younger 20s and not focusing on bettering my career or schooling. Now I am 27 and still have no man, but at least I am at peace now. Story 7. Continuing to try and make my parents love me for so long was exhausting. I wish I could go back and tell my 16-year-old self to trust them when they threw me out of the house. I wasted so much time and headspace that should have been spent elsewhere. Story 8. Not reaching out more directly to a young neighbor, who was like a little brother to me, before he had a mental health breakdown and died at 20 years old while running away from home. He was hit by a car while running on the freeway, not thinking clearly at the time, of course. I knew him since birth, and he looked up to me quite a lot. He was incredibly smart and had a super dry wit that I loved but struggled to find his place in life. I was aware he had been having a rough go, but wasn't sure how to bring it up in conversation. Now I never can. I don't blame myself anymore for why he passed, but I do know now to never let something like that go unsaid. If someone's feeling alone and having a rough time, I'm there to be supportive however I can. The alternative is years and years of regret. Story 9. That far too long, I put myself last and made everything else a priority. I just didn't learn to love myself or have mercy on myself. I am still my most severe judge. Story 10. There have been times when I was not good enough to the people who were good to me. I would trade a lot to go back and be kinder, wiser, and more patient in those times. Story 11. When Imagine Dragons released their documentary Believer in January of 2018, it was on TV. My parents, accepting mother, homophobic father, were eager to watch it. Not wanting to hear my dad make gagging or vomiting noises at the LGBTQ+ community the whole time. I was 18 and thought I was bi at the time. I'm a lesbian now for sure. I excused myself and went to my room. After the documentary, my mom came in and said that dad got really emotional and that he said he was going to work on changing his views for me. He passed away 6 months later. I was never able to gather the courage to talk to him about it before he passed away, and that will weigh on me like a boulder for the rest of my life. Story 12. I did not just continue with my master's. I graduated 4 years ago with my undergraduate degree. Then I took a break. I love my job, but I wish I had not waited so long. I am starting next fall, so I am excited to reverse this regret and finish. Story 13. I was socially awkward and as dense as a neutron star. I used to think that nobody wanted to date me, and later in life, I realized that the girls had given me the most obvious hints ever. Kind of regret not seeing that when I was younger. The might-have-beens are fun to think about. Story 14. Picking the wrong major. Quitting my PhD. Abusing substances. Quitting the best. Engaging in inappropriate relationships. Getting married. Engaging in another inappropriate relationship. Not settling the divorce sooner. Buying an apartment in Korea. Selling all my IPO stock too early. Pick any one of them. Story 15. When my best friend ended his life in my early 20s, I didn't attend his funeral because I felt so ashamed and blamed myself for it. He called me the night it happened and asked me to come over and hang out, but I dismissed him because I had to study. Even if it was my fault, I still should have gone to pay my respects and maybe find some closure. Over 20 years later, and it still haunts me. Story 16. Back in 2010, I had a buddy who was trying to talk me into buying Bitcoin. I have no idea how long I would have held it if I had said yes, but I would be a millionaire today if I had just said yes. Story 17. Wasting so much of my life worrying about what people think of me, not allowing myself to do things because of how I think others perceive me. I am 27 and still struggling with the idea that I don't have to be so wound up about anyone's judgment or whatever. If I want to do something, I can. Story 18. I am not sending my dog to the veterinarian on Saturday. He was really sick, but my family and I figured he would recover if we gave him medications and helped him out because it worked before. If he did not get better, we would take him to the veterinarian on Monday. I found his lifeless body Sunday at 7 a.m. Story 19. The cruelty I showed to a friend of mine who did nothing but love, encourage, and support me, even when it was clear I was rapidly losing my mind and afraid to get help, which is my responsibility alone and decidedly not hers. I'm so sorry. I know you said you'd be back in the future, but I'm still amazed that you were able to give me that guarantee even then, after the things I said and the accusations I made. In the end, you don't have to forgive me or come back, of course. Story 20. Leaving the love of my life. Been single since then, tried to win her back, but it was too late. It has been 11 years, but my love for her has not changed. Tried pursuing other girls, but it is really not the same. Story 21. I have a few. For starters, having a threesome when I was in high school with my boyfriend and his friend. It was fun then, but led to problems later. It didn't help that she was a bully of mine, and now I feel so stupid for letting her know me so intimately. Story 22. Letting so many friendships go for stupid reasons or just because I was too lazy to keep in touch. I miss so many of those people, and it's too late to rekindle. Story 23. I should have left my family of origin and left the country when I was 18. But, foolishly, I stuck by them as they used me and abused me. I waited way too long to go no contact with them, and now my life is pretty much destroyed. Story 24. Trusting a doctor to fix a septal perforation was a challenge for me. I woke up from surgery to find my head had been sliced open 7 inches behind my hairline. The doctor had drilled into and through my sinus cavity to procure cartilage from the back of my septum. Then, he cut out my entire nasal structure and did not know how to rebuild my nose. He closed me up with an empty nose and told me everything went perfectly. He never got consent for any of the procedures he performed on me and essentially lied, making it my word against his. Story 25. My great-grandmother was in the hospital, and she was getting ready to pass away. She had forgotten who people were, so I was scared to call her and risk having her not recognize me or become agitated. I couldn't visit her because I had to work. She died alone and confused. Story 26. Adjusting my life for an ex. I gave up my relatively affordable apartment to move into his house, only for his German Shepherd to bite me regularly and for him to evict me one day in cold December during COVID when he was upset because I couldn't read his mind regarding tailoring his work pants. Story 27. I regret not respecting others and only focusing on myself and what I wanted. I had a God complex in freshman year because everybody loved me and I thought I could get away with everything. Nobody would hate me if I did something bad. I shouldn't have had that mindset. I regret letting my ex run my life. My friends, my social media, my whole world. All of it is ruined because I let it happen. I regret developing a lying habit. I'm actively working on it with my therapist, but I have lost so many friends from lying to keep myself from losing more. I feel like the boy who cried wolf now. I regret leaving my ex. He was very kind and cared a lot about me. I left him for the guy who ran my life 2 to 3 times. I'm constantly so angry at myself because he has every right to let me go. He stayed even after those times and I lost somebody special. I regret not calling my uncle more before he died. I wish I had the same mindset as when we were kids. I'm 17 and I lost him when I was 13. God, I wish I could go back. I regret having sex with my ex over and over during school to the point where if I go back now, I'd be a super senior. I'm missing out on everything and I'm alone. I regret thinking that sex could keep this guy I mutually liked with me when I should have just cherished him as himself and not brought sex into it. I regret using my body to keep people because that's all I ever knew. I regret developing hypersexuality due to events. I regret letting it happen. I regret not being able to express myself better, to explain things without it coming out terribly and ruining everything. I regret getting irritated at people and then dealing with the consequences of what I've done. I regret sharing my mental feelings with people since it makes me sound crazy. I regret everything in my past, and if there was a time machine where I could go back and redo my life with the knowledge I have now, I 100% would. All of it. I know that the only time I'm going to experience those things again is going to be on my deathbed. I am still incredibly depressed because my life has fallen apart. If anybody sees this, take these as lessons for yourself if you are dealing with similar things. Story 28. Not following my dream of being a professional baseball player. I had the skills and the chance to go to college, but I didn't do it. I regret it every day. Story 29. Not being able to say goodbye to my father before he left my family and me in 2016. My sister and I were lucky to say it to our mother because of her will, and she did not want machines to continue keeping her active, but my dad got hit hard when we weren't around in the nursing home, and he passed away before my sister and I arrived. Although I always told him I loved him and thanked him every time I went to see him at the nursing home, I told him I would see him the next day for a bit. Story 30. Whenever I think of regrets, I always think of things that relate to my parents. But at the same time, I don't know what I could have done to change the outcome. My mom died when I had just turned 29 of colon cancer, and my dad died of suicide when I was 35. Basically because he blamed himself for my mom's death and couldn't bear to live his life without her. What could I have done? My dad regrets not insisting that my mom start getting colonoscopies at age 50 when he started getting them. Could I have insisted she get them, too? But at that time, I was only 18 years old and just going to college. Health stuff like that was the furthest thing from my mind. By the time she was diagnosed, she was already stage 4 in 2012. They've come a long way with cancer treatments since then, but at the time, that diagnosis was a death sentence. I wish I was in closer proximity to my dad prior to him dying by suicide. I moved across the country a year prior. We talked and texted all the time. I wish I probed further when he texted. I'm not sure about imposing and how I am doing. Regarding staying with my aunt and uncle when visiting the state I moved to, why didn't I ask, "How are you doing?" He died 5 days later. If I never moved out of the state he and I both lived in, would I have caught the signs of his depression and hopelessness? Would he still be alive? I have regrets, but not a solid solution to my regrets. If anything, I wish I had grown up faster than I did throughout my 20s, so I could have further developed my relationship as an adult relationship with my mom. That would have been nice. Luckily, I had grown to have an adult relationship with my dad very early on. I even worked with him for 3 years, which I look back on fondly. But I always will regret that I didn't say more or do more before he died. I think I regret being too self-absorbed in my own life to step back and recognize what a gift my parents were to me at a younger age. I'd give anything to tell them what they mean to me. I got to tell my dad, but I don't think I ever got to tell my mom. I wish I knew then at 18 what I know now at 39. Maybe things could have been different. Oh well. Story 31. Breaking virginity with someone who would simply get it over with resulted in a child who had to endure 18 years of emotional and psychological narcissistic abuse while living with her mother. I love my daughter, but she didn't deserve that situation. Story 32. Going to Brigham Young University for college, I got a worse education than I would have at my second choice school, which led to years of poor mental health. On the other hand, I did save a lot of money on tuition and received a degree that has enabled me to build a career. I am not someone who harbors many regrets, but that is one decision point that I wish I could go back in time and alter. In general, I do not recommend religious colleges. Story 33. That I stayed in a job that wasn't working for so long. I really struggled to keep up with a very challenging job. The job made me depressed, suicidal to the point that I had a thankfully unsuccessful attempt, and I still stayed for another 6 years. I spent a good year playing that suicide number song on the way to work. There was a stubborn part of me that treated the job like a challenge I had to conquer. And I also didn't want people to know I was a failure at the one job I had worked for years to get. Did I eventually conquer it? Kind of. I was passable, but I wasn't anything special in it. But it cost so much energy and time. I come home mentally drained such that I didn't have any energy for hobbies or anything I enjoyed. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is to quit, cut your losses, and move on to something more productive. The last few months I spent working at the job, I was obsessed with cancer blogs for some reason. And I realized that if I had been given a few months to live, I would have considered my entire life totally wasted. I put in my resignation, and I never looked back. Story 34. Not taking anything seriously. Education, health, career, and just everything. I am now 36, permanently disabled, unemployed, and broke. I feel like I threw everything away and set it on fire.